Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar promoted by SoftExpert. Today's event discusses about strategic plan. The webinar will be conducted by Mr. Anthony Taylor, the Principal and Lead Strategic Planning Facilitator at SME Strategy. He has an entrepreneurial background with more than 10 years of experience running his own small businesses in various industries. I wish you all a great webinar.
So today, I want to talk to you about creating a strategic plan with your team, and we're sort of going to color it by the fact that the maybe original ways of being able to do that are no longer workable. Okay, so that the original sort of off-site strategy planning session might not be viable, but you still need to be able to create a strategic plan. So I want to first off say, that the conversations, the process, and the structure doesn't change. It's just the method that changes. So when we talk a lot about strategic planning, we always look at the why versus the how. The why is the same. You're trying to get your team aligned. You're trying to get them on the same page. It's just the how that's different. So in itself, this is a strategic planning exercise of strategic planning, but we're not going to get that meta in the first minute of the webinar. So let's get going. So a little bit about me. So as I mentioned, my name is Anthony Taylor. I'm the managing partner and lead facilitator at SME Strategy. So we specialize in helping small to medium-sized organizations, entrepreneurial organizations, create and execute their strategic plans. I've been running the business for 10 years. I've worked all over the world, had a lot of different businesses myself, led a lot of different teams, and now I've taken that into helping organizations create and execute their plans. I'm the host of the Strategy and Leadership podcast. I have some very cool guests, and I get to talk to really smart people about strategy and execution. I've written 2 books, one on entrepreneurship, on all the mistakes that you can make, and then one on alignment, really. And that's sort of the heart of everything we do at SME Strategy is aligned strategy development. So how do you build a strategy where people are aligned and bought into it? If you're on the webinar today, I just want to thank you for all of your comments ahead of time, really understanding what your challenges are and what you're dealing with and what you're hoping to accomplish was super valuable. And I really hope that meets all of those needs. And what I heard from people was, how do we build a plan that gets aligned? How do I build the steps? How do I set the goals? How do I get people engaged into the process? So that's everything that we do is right around there. I've facilitated over 250 strategy sessions, strategic planning sessions, and we just had so many conversations with lots of people. So been in the trenches a lot, and that doesn't even include the conversations we've had recently virtually. So some of the clients that we have worked with at SME Strategy, so as I mentioned, Canada, US, it doesn't include the people that have taken our online programs, but we've worked with organizations, big and small, lots of different situations, lots of different organizations, but our process has always been the same. And that's what's really cool about strategic planning, is that whether we're working with the Central Bank of Fiji, whether we're working with an association in Florida, or whether we're working with a small business in British Columbia or where we are, the process is always the same. People have similar concerns. And what we're going to talk about today is really how can you use that process, put it within your organization to be able to accomplish the goals and objectives that you want. Okay, so when getting the most out of today, I imagine that you are here on this webinar because you want to maximize the growth opportunities for your organization, whether that's your own organization or an organization that you're in or one that you run. You want to get your team engaged and bought into the process. You want them to be part of it, and you want them to take accountability from the process, not just you mandating it, but them actually buying in and wanting to participate so that everybody moves as a team. And you want to take the steps and do the work to move forward. So you're not assuming that it's going to be a quick fix, or you're not thinking that it's just like a magic thing. We're going to fill out a document and everything's going to turn around. If you have any organizational challenges, they may have come from years of doing things a certain way. So it might take time to transform that. But I assume and I assert that you're on the chat today or on the webinar because you want to take the steps and want to take the actions to move that forward. So first, I want to talk to you about how we see strategic plans evolve so that you can locate yourself within this sort of spectrum. And I know that some of you have never done strategic planning before, and this is your first time going through this. Some of you have done strategic planning once in a while, and you might have a plan, buried somewhere. You might have a plan and be clear on where you're going and knowing what you need to do in order to move forward. And so you have a document. The next two levels up are really what I'm hoping to get you towards, is one, alignment with a plan. When everybody in your organization is clear on what needs to be done and how they can contribute, and the culture transformation that goes within it. Peter Drucker famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if you don't have the culture to support your strategy, it doesn't matter what your strategy is. So I highly encourage you to look at how you can transform your culture. And then performance management is when you're ticking along, you're following up on your plan, you're hitting your goals because you know what your goals are, you're tracking them, and everybody has accountability. So our goal as a company is to get you to that level 4 and level 5. And why I wanted to share this graphic is a lot of you had said, hey, how do I sell this to the rest of my team? How do I get them engaged in the process? Having them see the stepping stones is one of the steps you can take in order to get them to buy in, because they know what's coming up next. So out of the hundreds of strategic plans that we've seen, this is sort of the gamut that we've seen organizations be at. And you could be an established, very successful $100 million organization with no strategic plan. I have seen it. Okay. And you could be the smallest organization, you could be a solopreneur, and you've got performance management. So it's not about the steps per se, it's just where are you at? It's not good or bad, it's just where are you at right now? Okay. So I want you to ask yourself, before we get into the webinar, if you had alignment with your plan, if everybody on your team was aligned, if your team was bought in, you had that highest level of buy-in where people were just took the accountability, took the ownership, and really just loved doing what was needed to be done. And if you're an owner, you know what that's like when people had that same commitment that you had, and everybody knew what their accountabilities were in the plan. What would that be like for you as a leader? So put it in the chat box. I just want to know, what would it be like for you if you had alignment with your plan? Because this is sort of like the visioning. It's if you had alignment, if your team was bought in, everybody knew what their accountabilities were, what would that be like? Just shout a couple words out. It'd be great, awesome, fun. Just to get a sense of if this is something that you're interested in, to make sure that you're in the right rooms, because I don't want you to waste your time. If you're not interested in this, then yeah, there you go. You would get so much more done. Ideal environment. It would be fun, wouldn't it? You'd actually enjoy your work and you wouldn't come home and dump on your spouse. Profitable business. I love that. And being in the world of performance, that feeling when even if you have a long day, you're getting stuff done, that progress feeling, that's really what the opportunity of alignment is here, is how do you get your team bought in? People will feel empowered and centered. They love their job and they would stay. Everybody's going to work. Yeah, that's excellent. That's what you want, right? And business systems that work and support the growth. Because it's easy to just say, hey, strategic planning is a document or strategic planning is a process. People come to us and they say, hey, I want a strategic plan. But what you really get is that alignment, that clarity, that great place to work, that engagement, the HR retention. There's just so much on the other side of a document. And that's really why I want you to stay focused on the alignment, the buy-in, and the accountability. Those are the 3 things I want you to take away from that. People are empowered. You would spend more time leading and less time firefighting. What would that be like if you could actually stay at this level instead of having to follow up with people and making sure that they were doing the stuff they wanted to do? High engagement and retention, absolutely. So I just get you presence to what the opportunity of strategic planning and alignment done well can make possible. So the strategy journey, as you start looking at strategy, there's a million different options you can take. You might have come across our blog. You might be a reader for 5 years. You might have done your MBA. You might have done some high school courses. You might have read a book, Scaling Up or EOS or something like that. And there's just so many potential options you can take, not only from learning, but on a day-to-day option, on a day-to-day basis. You have 8 hours in a day or 10 hours or 12, however you do things. What are the steps that you take? How do you figure out where you need to go? How do you figure out what to do next in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish? And that's sort of the challenge. And in fact, that is strategy. Strategy in itself is about choices as much as what you do as what you don't do. You're on today's webinar, you're choosing not to do something else with this hour of time. So what we want to do in terms of alignment is align your strategy to get you to where you want to go in the most effective and enjoyable way possible. So here's where I see people mess up. We're just right out the gate. I told you here's some challenge. Here's where people mess up in their strategic plan. They have no clear vision. So they actually don't know where they're trying to get to in the first place. There's a quote that I use all the time in Alice in Wonderland, and there's a fork in the road, and Alice asks, which road should I take? And the Cheshire Cat says, where are you trying to get to? And then she says, well, I don't know. And then he says, well, any road will get you there. If you don't know where you're going, there's no way you're ever going to get there. So the number one thing where entrepreneurs, business owners, businesses, organizations screw up is they don't have a clear vision. They don't know what success would look like. So they get frustrated when things aren't moving the way they want. So you can see, does your organization have a clear vision? Does everybody know what that vision is? Non-measurable goals. We see this all the time. People will hand us a strategic plan document and they'll be like, hey, we have a plan. And it's just a list of like a wish list, a task list. But they actually couldn't tell you if it was successful or not. And so setting up your strategic plan the right way with measurable goals is going to make the difference in not only accomplishing it, but picking the right things to do and knowing if the things that you've done have made a difference in the progress. Communication silos. You can have a plan, but if your team isn't working together and communicating, then you're sort of trying to build on a foundation of poop. If you don't have your team working together, it takes so much more energy and effort to get the plan going, because people are trying to just like look out for themselves. They're trying to, I have my plan, you have your plan, go do your thing. But it's just friction. The highest performing organizations have great culture. Now, to have a great culture, you need to have that communication, that openness, and that teamwork. You can't have any of that with communication silos. I don't care about your plan if your people aren't talking and working together. And the challenges, interpersonal things, they have been there for years. It could have been a thing that happened 15 years ago that is still coloring your meetings and continue to color your meetings. Maybe you have people being defensive for whatever reason because they're dealing with their own stuff. I don't know if you want to in the chat, you can tell me if some of this stuff is resonating. Do you have people in your organization who have no clear vision, no measurable goals, communication silos? Just give me a yes if you have that, if you know what I'm talking about. No alignment. That's when people are moving in different directions. Everybody's doing different things, different expectations, different understandings about where we're going. Well, I thought we were trying to go here. Well, I thought we were trying to go here. How can you end up in the same place if you're all going to a different location? And I see a couple. Yes, we have them in our institution. We work a lot with academias, and everybody's got their own interests, and not just academia. Everybody does. When we look at it, we think of a sports analogy as the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back of the jersey. And so while everybody might have their marketing or operations or finance hats on or whatever, it's important that you first get everybody to the level of organization. Everybody's got to wear the company hat, the organization hat first as a team, and then we can work downward. But I'll talk to you about that. And then no accountability. We had this meeting. We did strategic planning before. We hear that a lot. We've done strategic planning before and our team didn't think it worked. Well, it's because you didn't work it. You didn't do it. You made a plan and nobody followed up. You have a document that you haven't looked at in 9 months. Now it's September, October, and you're saying, well, we didn't hit our goals. Yeah, because you forgot about your plan. There was no follow-up. There's no accountability. And again, if you're still going through this, let me know. Is this the stuff that you see? Have you seen this in your experience? I look at many of you on LinkedIn. I know your careers, and I can assess that some of your organizations are probably like this. It's pervasive, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, hey, what the opportunity is to transform how you guys approach strategy and the thinking of strategy, or strategic thinking versus strategic planning per se. Okay, so I want to get into the meat of this. This is our process called aligned strategy development. It's our 5-step process for creating an aligned strategic plan. Okay, so full disclosure, I've taken everything that I've learned over years as an entrepreneur. I've taken, $100,000 loss from a business owner. I've taken working on nonprofit boards. I've read legitimately hundreds of books and taken hours and hours of courses. I've done marketing strategies. I've been that guy on the street handing out flyers. doing the marketing stuff, doing the operations, growing businesses. I've had 8 different businesses, and it's all to say I've had a lot of lessons. And I've synthesized all of that into this process to take strategic planning from this sort of big 4, big 5 consulting kind of monstrous program into something that's super easy to understand and simple to execute, so that even somebody in your team who's never heard of strategic planning before can get it. It's not supposed to be complicated. It's supposed to be easy so people can get it. And it has to like, oh yeah. And that's why I use a lot of like dumb sports analogies and simple things that sort of resonate. I'll bring up losing weight a lot, because losing weight is a strategic plan. It's just, you just need to know what you're trying to accomplish. So 5-step process for creating an aligned strategic plan. We call it aligned strategy development. And I think it's pretty awesome. So it comes in 5 stages. The first, please feel free to take down notes. Where are we now? Before you go anywhere, you need to assess where you're at. Before you go anywhere, you need to assess where you're at. And so the conversations, strategic planning, as we look at it, is just a series of conversations for us to determine where are we now. So first, doing a SWOT, which many of you have heard of. This is not new, it's not groundbreaking stuff, but it's like the core of grounding where you're at. Your strengths, what are you good at? Your weaknesses, what are you not good at? Your opportunities, what are some of the things that you can take advantage of? And your threats, what's waiting to bite you in the butt? So you want to build your strategy from a place of strength. It's going to go faster. It's going to be easier. Your weaknesses are the things that might be getting in the way of you actually accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And it's probably a source of frustration and loss of energy, loss of resources. Opportunities. If you really take the time to dive into this, you probably have more opportunities than you can actually accomplish at any one time. So the trick about strategic planning is prioritizing your opportunities, prioritizing the weaknesses that you're going to address so that you can move forward. It's not more complicated than that. You just need to figure out where you're at. And if you never take the time to have it like black and white on a piece of paper, then you're just guessing. And worse, everybody has a different idea of what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. So when we, fly around the countries, go into different rooms, we just ask the questions, but it's the opportunity to get everybody on the same page. You're like, oh yes, these are our strengths, these are our weaknesses, these are our opportunities, these are our threats. What are we doing next? So next is a pestle analysis. You may or may not have heard about this. I've done webinars on this a lot, and I will continue to, because it's so important, especially now as the world is changing rapidly. It stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. What we want to do is assess the trends that are happening in the future so that we can be proactive instead of reactive. Assessing the trends where we think the world is going to go so that we can be proactive instead of reactive. Wayne Gretzky says, for my Canadian friends, but I'm sure if you're in LA or wherever, you know who Wayne Gretzky is, says, go to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. And now the world has changed. It got turned over upside down the past 2 months. The world is changing. Trends are changing. Human beings, society is going to do things differently. There's that meme on the internet that says, who led your digital transformation? Was it COVID-19? If you guys know what I'm talking about, just say, yes, I know what you're talking about. Things that have been in a certain way in the past are no longer the way in the future. And then there's other trends that are happening, political trends, societal trends, legal trends, that are also affecting your business. So I don't know if you know this, Netflix and Blockbuster. For those of you that are old enough to know what Blockbuster is, and you probably know what Netflix are, Netflix and Blockbuster were in the same business. They were in the video rental business. Okay. Netflix saw the trend of where technology was going and adapted to it. Blockbuster did not. Which one of them is around and which one of them is a giant business, or which one of them is out of business? So what you want to do as a team is get aligned on where the trends are going for your industry. I did a session yesterday for a multi-location coffee shop. And I'm like, your locations that were primarily retail, people aren't going to be walking around anymore. People are at home. People are spending 10 hours a day in the home. How does that affect going out for coffee? Maybe your $5 latte is now a treat because you're getting out of the house versus like a necessity to get you through endless meetings. I don't know. Or webinars with a guy like me. Anyway, so where are we now? Where is the world going? To try to anticipate what those things are and to be proactive. And then stakeholder and management team inputs. So that means any reports, any information that you need, but also the perspectives of everybody in your team. Because if you're a CEO, you do not see what your marketing person sees. You do not see what your HR person sees. You do not see what your finance person sees on a day-to-day basis. And everybody's perspective is right. Once you actually put all of those perspectives together, you get the whole picture. Otherwise, you only get your version of the story. And that's another piece where teams don't actually talk to each other strategically to understand what's going on. They just say, my way is the right way. But if you can sort of break down those communication silos, build alignment into your process, you're going to have way better strategy because you have way more perspectives and better perspectives and more experience. So this is, I want to say, like a secondary part of the strategy process, but because of all of this like COVID stuff and people's business models changing, I really wanted to talk to you about building a capability-driven strategy. If you want me to do another webinar on this, let me know. But I think it's just important for you to, for lack of a better word, pivot or adapt to what's happening in the market. So building a capabilities-driven strategy is a foundation to building a competitive advantage. Okay, it's how do you actually win in the marketplace? Look at what are you good at? And what are you better at than everybody else? And actually assessing that in the market. Okay, that's all I gotta say. What are you good at? What are you better at than everybody else? Just to take stock of it if you're thinking in a competitive space. Now, this acronym VERO stands for valuable, inimitable, rare, and organizationally duplicatable. And I'll explain each. Something that's valuable is a table stake. If what you're doing is not valuable, then you have no sense offering it. Okay. If it's valuable and hard to imitate, it's going to be a short-term competitive advantage. And you're going to see in this world, I believe, some fast movers. Some people are going to adapt to the changes and then they're going to get copied. So when they had a competitive advantage, the competitive advantage is going to disappear because it was easy to imitate. And you're going to see a lot of people copying. The example I use is McDonald's put out all-day breakfast. Every other burger chain put out all-day breakfast the next day. Very easy to imitate. Valuable, rare, and hard to imitate is going to result in a long-term advantage. So I'll talk later about your sort of supply chain and business model, but the more things you can do within your organization to create differentiation, the longer you're going to have a competitive advantage. And as you pivot, as you change your model, you want to look at developing that economic moat to protect you from your customer or from your competitors. And competitors mean substitutes and alternatives. Okay, so you really need to be able to provide something that's super valuable, hard to imitate, rare, and is organizationally duplicatable, that everybody in your organization can provide. As you look at what you can provide that offers more value, if you can take all of these things together, you're going to have more sustainability for the future, even if the future is uncertain. Okay, so we looked at where are we now. Next, we're going to look at where are we going. Okay, so this is the second stage of the project. Where are we going? Because if you don't know where you're going, how are you ever going to get there? Okay, and the first thing that people think of is where we're going is vision. Okay, so when I think of vision, I don't think of a vision statement. I think of if success was a place, how would you know if you got there? Where are you going? Why should you go there? What is winning? And in our courses and our facilitations, we tell people, it's like, if you took a time machine to whatever date, and given that it's May 2020 and the world is uncertain, I would say if you took a time machine to 2 years from now and you were 100% successful, what would that look like? And describe it in vivid detail. So you actually knew what success looked like, and then make your decisions. And you're going to make your decisions either going closer or further away. That's the only two decisions that you're going to make. If success was a place, how would you know if you got there? That's vision. That's a vision statement. That's all you need to do. You just need to make sure that everybody has an aligned vision. So my vision of success might not be your vision of success. If you're in an organization, you say, well, my vision is to be at $2 million in 2022. Well, somebody else's vision might be at $20 million. It's not that it's good or bad. You guys are just going to different places. So you need to have the conversation of getting people aligned on what that success looks like. What is winning? How will you know? And are we on the same page? Next is mission, is how do you actually accomplish the vision? What is the driver to that? So we talk about what is your purpose, and then asking, who is your main customer? So what do you do? uh, who are you, what do you do, and who do you do it for? And around mission is, if you serve everybody, you serve nobody. So what we try to do is identify who your core customer is and what you do for them, so that it focuses your efforts and it focuses your vision. If it's not going to get you to your vision, don't do it. And we have so many articles on each of these modules. We have courses and programs on each of these modules, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but vision and mission. If you could focus the bulk of your energy, 70% of your time, money, energy, serving one core customer, who would it be? Given that it has to accomplish your vision. And the strategy choices, instead of trying to focus on everybody, focus on a few people and do it really well. So that's the question that you want to ask your team, and go into that into depth. Who is your customer? And know that I'm using the word customer loosely. It's like who you are focused the bulk of your energy on. And then we're going to talk about alignment. How do you align the mission and vision? Because the mission is going to help you get to where you want to go. And this is our aligned strategy development pyramid, and we'll go into the steps after. So I want to talk to you about one of my clients, Ian Hunt. He's one of my favorites. He was at my wedding, great guy. I don't think he's on the webinar, but him and I have worked together for 5 years. And every year I've come into his team to realign his vision, realign his mission, realign his values. And when I say realign, I just mean I'm just leading the conversation for him. But what the company went from was being a company with different silos, no clear direction. And last year they had their best year ever. Highest profitability year, greatest customer engagement scores. They're doing very well in this economic environment. But it took years and time to get everybody on the ownership and the leadership to get aligned, because we just had the conversations about, what does success look like? How does the success of a CEO align with the success of the owner of the business? And making sure that everybody is moving towards the same place. Because if you're not going to the same place, you're going to different places. And that just means that you're not aligned. So just like one of the things. And then actually the values that he stands next to, that's in his office. And that came out of our work together. He has his mission statement written up in his office. His purpose is to be quiet and not bother his clients, which is fantastic. So we talk about values. I talked about culture eats strategy for breakfast. What are the values and behaviors in your organization? What are the ways we do things around here? What is not acceptable behavior? Example I use for values is when you go to somebody's house, sometimes you take off your shoes. And if you wore your shoes in like a shoes off household, it would be weird, right? And that's what values are. It's what do we expect in our organization that are the behaviors that you have to sign up for? And then once you have that common understanding of behaviors, then everything else flows from the plan, because then you have sort of ground rules and understanding as to how we do things. I don't know if this is an experience for you, but if you have anybody in your organization, or you have a culture of not feeling safe, or not sharing what's really on your mind, or not calling out behaviors when they don't happen in like the way they're supposed to, it's sometimes because you don't have formally articulated values, and then people are afraid of what they can and can't do. And if you have that experience in your organization, if people are a little bit gun shy about saying what there is, or you don't have any sort of formalized rules, let me know. Because when you have a culture that doesn't support your organizational activities, that's what people quit. People quit because they don't know what the rules of the game are. And if you didn't know the rules of the game, would you play very long? And we could go into culture and values and behaviors of, talking the talk, walking the walk, rewarding the walk. But it's, are you saying one thing and acting a different way? Are you saying you value work-life balance for the people that are getting promoted or working 16 hours a day? Which one of those are you doing? So it's important to formally articulate the values and behaviors that you expect from your people, because then they will lean towards it. And if they don't live the values that you have, get them off the bus, get them out of your organization, because they weren't a right fit to begin with. And even if you don't have this, in your heart of hearts, the bottom 20% of your organization, the people that you can't wait to let go, are the ones that aren't in line with your organizational values, even if they're implied and not explicit. Those people just don't fit. But the people that do fit, the highest performers, they're the ones who gel with the way your team does things. I see a couple of hand raises. I don't know if those are questions. If you have a question, please put it in the question box or in the chat box. I don't know if that's the amen kind of, I hear you. But if you know what I'm talking about, just give me a yes, because I do want to make sure that what I'm talking about aligns with what you're experiencing. And we're going to, in the chat box, as Jen had mentioned, there's a question and answer box. So if you have a specific question, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll answer those after. There we go. Thank you, Jenna. All right. So what you really want to do is you want to align your strategy. You know, we talk about strategy and strategic planning and all the actions, the goals, and the operation stuff. It's not the thing that's going to make the difference. It's the vision, the mission, and the values. That's the thing that actually guides your team. It's bigger than them. It's the why. You know, if I told you to accomplish your goal by eating hamburgers all day, you'd eat hamburgers all day. You don't care how, you just want the why. But most organizations operate without having any idea why or where they're going. They just keep being busy and it's exhausting. And then they come back and they say, oh man, we're not making any progress in our plan because you don't know where you're trying to go. So you got to align your vision and purpose, because the purpose, my purpose for getting up is to help you guys. My purpose for getting up is to not have anybody get ripped off like I did. My purpose for getting up is to help nonprofits have greater impact in the world. I'll tell you, I don't want to wake up a lot of days, but when I think about why I'm doing what I'm doing, that's the thing that pulls me. And that's what I want for you and your people. I believe that strategic planning can change the world. I believe it can change your community. And I know if you're happier because your work was happier, your day was better, you're going to come back and your family is going to be happier. And that's how we can change the world. Happy workers make happy families, which makes happy planet. Okay, align your strategy with your vision and purpose. So there's another friend and client, Chelsea Fitzpatrick. We did a couple strategy sessions for them. And what we set out to do, we set out their long-term vision. And part of that was really the culture transformation. And now they have a culture crew. They have a chief culture officer. You know, it's changed the engagement scores, measurable engagement scores from 60 to 70 to 90s. And people love working there. They have a remote staff. They've managed this. They take care of their people. But it was all because they looked at vision, mission, values as a driver to performance. And now she can lead instead of manage. She doesn't firefight. And we help them communicate as a team from different organizations at different locations to a successful company. They have 40 different employees, 40-something different employees in multiple locations. So it's about creating that accountability, creating the communication, creating the system and process. Should super embrace the communication piece. Okay, we have where are we now? Where are we going? Next is what is going to get in our way. Most strategic plans don't even think about this. You're optimistically thinking this big picture vision. And for those of you that have ever had a leader that had like a pie in the sky, you're like, oh yeah, there's this thing that sounds good, but as soon as you say that sounds good, but you've killed it. So who's ever experienced a big picture vision, but it was like optimistic pie in the sky? Nobody actually thought of like what was really going to happen. Let me know in the chat and say, I know what you're talking about. So we look at what is going to get in our way. We're proactive instead of reactive. If we're trying to plan a picnic, I want to know if it's going to rain. If I'm trying to get to an appointment, I want to know if there's traffic. If I'm trying to roll out an initiative, I want to know if there's going to be engagement or resistance. You know, if I want to have a marketing campaign, I want to know if my customers are going to get engaged with it. So it's all of those things are just uncertainties. You know, like one of the potential uncertainties is like global pandemic. One is, you know, how soon are we going to be able to reopen our retail stores? How likely is it we're going to be able to get the supply that we need? So identifying the risks ahead of time to say, what are the uncertainties? Some of them, they can be both positive and negative. What are the impacts of that risk or that uncertainty? What is the likelihood of that happening? And how do we do to mitigate that risk? So risks themselves are just risks. But when you say, well, I want to have a picnic outside, well, a little bit of drizzle versus a torrential rainstorm, different impact. If there's a 100% chance of rain and a 10% chance of rain, different likelihood. You want to take those things into consideration so that then you can say, mitigate the risk. I might have to move it inside. I might have to cancel my event. I might have to just buy a tent, give everybody an umbrella or ponchos. If I can give everybody a poncho, then, you know, we're rocking. So it's about understanding the risk and understanding that not all risks are created equal. So you want to measure it on a heat map, because the little green risks are the ones that are going to distract you, but the red ones, the dumpster fires, are the ones that are really going to take you out of the game. And so in your strategic planning, in your action planning, you really want to identify the biggest risks ahead of time and build your strategy to mitigate the risks, not just arbitrarily picking tasks. And this is when you outline it and create like a risk register, which we talk about a lot, is that it's going to be smack in your face and everybody on your team is going to be aligned and be like, oh, wow, those are really the biggest things that are going to get in the way. Chelsea, my friend, and my client, that was the thing. She said, I walked into our strategy session with, I already knew what our priorities were. But when we do the risk exercise, it flipped everything on its head because they were addressing strategy from a place of informed decision, not just gut feel. So where are we now? Where are we going? What's going to get in our way? What do we need to do? And that's when we get into the goal setting and the prioritization. So setting 3-year goals, 1-year goals, quarterly goals, prioritizing and setting high-level strategic priorities. What are the most important things you should be doing? Not the things that are going to keep you busy, but the priorities. Don't do a lot of things poorly, do a couple things well. And the things that are going to get you to mitigate your risks and get you to your vision. If it's not going to get you to your vision, don't freaking do it. So this example really resonates with me as the lion and the lion tamer on the left. The story goes that the reason that the lion tamer can have the chair like that is because the lion tries to focus on all 4 points of the chair at once, and in the process gets paralyzed into doing nothing. Gets focused on too many things. So just in the chat, let me know, does your organization suffer from this? Do you have too many things on the go? Do you not accomplish any of them? You finish the year with no feeling of progress and even frustration. Because if you have 10 strategic priorities, you have no strategic priorities, and you turn into a docile kitty who has no idea where to turn. If you're an entrepreneur in the room, I'm talking to you, shiny object syndrome. I know it because I have it, but it exists in every CEO. If you're a VP or you're a senior leader and you're trying to corral your CEO who's got 1,000,001 ideas, this is him. He's the kitty. Work in progress. I got that. Like it's what happens. It happens to human beings. It's the paradox of choice. And so what you want to do from a strategic priority standpoint is to actually prioritize and put them in organization. And if you don't have this, then you're either lying, I'm just kidding, or you don't realize how pervasive it is. If you have 10 strategic priorities, you have 10% allocated to each priority. So you make a little bit of progress in a lot instead of a lot of progress on a little. Yeah, and if everybody has different priorities, well, then you're still not moving forward on that. So what's going to move the needle on the vision? You have the vision, the mission, the strategic priorities, and then breaking them down into goals and tactics. So there's another client of mine in Washington. We did a strategy session with him, and we did the visioning, the mission. And what we did was identify the top 3 strategic priorities, but then we took it to their team and said, how do you see us moving this forward? So we didn't just say, here's our priorities, go do it. We said, how can we accomplish these priorities with you? And they got 150 different answers from their team just by saying, what can we do to help? Or what can we do to move this forward? Not here's what you need to do. So they pulled them into the process instead of pushing the plan on them. And it was awesome. And then now they're just clicking along and they have it autonomous and they have they're aligned and engaged. So before you actually start doing action items, you need to know what success looks like. How do you measure success? What are the key ratios and the leading and lagging indicators? And I'm not going to go into leading and lagging indicators today, but your goals need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. If I'm trying to lose weight, does losing weight mean I'm going to lose a pound, or does it mean I'm going to lose 20 pounds? Am I going to lose that pound over 6 months or lose 20 pounds over 3 months? Different goals are going to require different actions, tactics, and strategies. So you could use something like a balanced scorecard in order to identify the goals that you have, but you have to use some sort of structure in order to do it. We use this simple one where we say, here's our strategic objective, here's our goals. We want to go from X to Y by date. Don't overcomplicate it. From where we are now to where we want to go by this date. How can I measure it? If I can't measure it, then it's probably not a goal. And then the tactics, the action items. How do we move forward and accomplish this? So depending on where you're at in your organization, and somebody brought it up already, is that everybody has their own different priorities. And while that's true, you want to make sure that you're starting off having organizational strategic priorities. So we talk about cascading goals. from top down within your organization, organizational level, team level, functional level, and individual level. Top down, bottom up. That's the alignment. Alignment with the vision, alignment with the strategy and the vision, and alignment with the rest of the organization. If you're not aligned, you're wasting time, you're wasting money, you're not going to get your plan forward. So big picture versus practical application. What are the things that you can do to move this forward? Where can you add value and make changes? Every single organization, for-profit, not-for-profit, has 4 things: operations, production, marketing, and sales. Operations, production, marketing, and sales. Okay, it's what you do to create value for your customer, and each of these things has activities within it. So you just need to find out where you can improve the activities. So improve activities using the business model canvas framework if you want. Key activities, key partner, resources, value proposition, customer relationships, channels, customer segments, cost structure, revenue streams. We do just business model canvas workshops for clients where they can improve their business model. If you are faced with big disruption, Google the business model canvas, and it's going to help you huge in pivoting, addressing the changes, addressing the needs of your customers moving forward. What parts of your supply chain create the most value in your business? What are the revenue drivers? What are the cost drivers? And impact those things from an operational perspective. So that's as far as I'm going to go down on the operations. So the last step is, how are we doing? What's next in the process? So once you have the plan, once you have the document, I'm going to give you a template. Jenna's going to put it in the chat when I ask her to later on. Once you have the plan, then that's when the work really starts. You have to then communicate the plan to staff and stakeholders, manage individual projects within the plan, manage change, get buy-in, overcome resistance, track and monitor progress against goals, and then stay focused on the mission and vision and values and continually realign your organization. So plan is just a start. So I'm sorry, because I just told you the plan was going to do it, but it's not. It's really the start. And you have to go do it. And whether or not you are doing it or not, somebody's doing it, and they could be doing it well or poorly. So which one is it? So risk to good implementation. Leadership is a big challenge. That's, we have our demonstrate leadership as one of our taglines. Communication, open lines of communication, the resources required to move the thing forward, buy-in. You're going to push the plan on people or pull them into it. And then a common language and process. And just actually, there's one more question I'll ask. Who in this room, in this webinar, 60 people, who has had experience like with a breakdown in having a common process or common language that drives the strategy? I learned strategy this way, I learned strategy that way. Well, what is the process? We're doing this in little phases. Well, I think we should do this. Who's ever had a breakdown, a challenge with that? Because that's one of the big things we see. I spend a meeting half an hour just circling the wagons around what the language was. And at the end of it, it was, oh, actually, no, I like the first one. Okay. But the part is that we need to all be on the same page in terms of what certain things mean. And then I could ask you if you have any problems with leadership, communication, resources, buy-in. It's just things that apply in organizations. That's just life. Harvard Business Review interviewed 26,000 people at 31 companies to determine what traits align with strong strategy execution. Information flows and decision rights are the most important factors to strategic plan success. So it's not actually the plan. It's who's doing what and when, and is the information we need getting to the people when we need it. So if you're having information breakdowns, if you're having leadership problems, if you're having communication problems, then you're not going to accomplish your plan. So just something to think about as you move forward is, what are you doing from a leadership perspective? What are you doing to elevate your ability as a team and as an individual to communicate and develop that internally? Okay, I know a lot of you said, how do we do this virtually? So I prefaced that the virtual process doesn't change. You're just having the conversations virtually. So just not all in the same room. There's actually benefits to it. I recommend breaking it up into small chunks. I think 3.5 hours per session is the max, and with a lot of breaks in between, but I think 3 hours is pretty good. Have a focus agenda and a framework, the guidance, the steps for the entire process. A whiteboard for collaboration is very helpful, either Google Docs or an app called Mural, which I really like. Have one facilitator and one note taker. That way you make the most of the conversations, and then leverage homework and pre-work to maximize time. You don't need to be using these strategy meetings for status updates. You want to focus on those meaty conversations, and we facilitate. Those are the kind of things that we do. At the end of the day, it's all about alignment. You need to align your team, you need to align your stakeholders, and you need to make sure that you have a common vision of what success is. And you need to continuously develop that alignment, because as soon as you're out of alignment, you're wasting time, money, and energy, and you're going the wrong place. So how do you get alignment? communicate simply and clearly, the getting buy-in, so bring people into the process, staff, board, and stakeholders. So really, again, you need that process, match goals and motivation, and are people given the capability and the tools they need to be successful? So creating a plan, you need to work backwards. In summary, you need to work backwards from your vision, mission, values, your strategic priorities, to then create goals, tasks, roles, and individual areas of responsibility. But first, you need to have the process. Like, the steps build on themselves, and that's why it's so important. So I want to talk to you about the strategic plan evolution again. You might be, depending on where you're at, you might be in a first time you ever need strategic planning. You might not have a clear direction. You might be doing strategic planning once in a while, which is sometimes worse because you might have multiple directions, because as you move forward, you move into different places. The ideal is that you have a plan and at least you know where you're going. But the real value for you, where your work is going to start to change, you're going to get all of those things that you wanted, is the alignment with the plan, where your staff have action items, you have that culture transformation, and you have the performance management. The monthly, quarterly KPIs, the action items are tracked and moved forward on.
On behalf of SoftExpert, thank you for the presence of everyone who participated in this event. If you have any questions, please contact the presenter via email. To see other webinars, ebooks, and white papers on this subject, please visit our website at www.softexpert.com. Find out more about SoftExpert solutions for enterprise business processes improvement, automation, corporate governance, excellence, and compliance management. Thanks for listening. See you next time.